you mind telling us your first name?
My name is Celestin.
Awesome. Can you tell us what your dreams were as a kid?
I really wanted to be a singer. I love Selena Quintanilla. I was like very inspired by big expression, so sharing that.
Could you tell us a little bit about your childhood and your relationship with your parents?
My childhood was pretty dysfunctional. My parents had substance abuse issues, and that leaked into their relationship in raising us. So there wasn't really a strong foundation of a sense of balance between like them being a parent and them still wanting to have fun. So we end up being in foster care. So my childhood years were with my parents were only until I was 10 years old.
How was that? Do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, sure. It was hard. It was hard because it felt lonely. Like not only not really having like that support from my parents, but also, you know, going to school and not really fitting in. I was, you know, pretty much to myself a lot. But I also feel like it was a gift. I wouldn't be where I am today if everything that happened didn't occur. I wouldn't be as strong in myself, and so I'm also grateful. There's definitely two ends to that.
How were the foster care experience for you? How was that?
They were also dysfunctional. It was hard transitioning from a place of like, wow, like really not a sense of belonging to like furthering that, you know, going from foster home to foster home, and even abusive foster homes. It was hard. It was like seeking guidance, like a parental role, and not really finding that. So I was really rebellious at that age. But it's cool because I'm still rebellious, but in a way that's like, you know, overcoming these systems.
What's the biggest thing you learned from your parents or lack thereof, and then then just in foster care in general?
The biggest lesson that I learned: resiliency of the human spirit, for sure. Because no matter what has been paved my way through, you know, the home that I grew up in and foster care, like no matter what people told me, like, oh, you know, you're gonna end up being a product of your environment, I knew deep inside that wasn't gonna be the case. I knew it, and I felt it in my resiliency, my ability to overcome, my ability to continue with a deep sense of faith, knowing that I'm meant for so much more than that was given to me.
Can you tell us about your first love and how that felt?
My first love, I guess a hobby, or not even a hobby, a passion, is writing and speaking and poetry and sharing my voice in all forms of expression. I find that I'm able to alchemize like the pain that I've been through by dancing, by singing, by you know, writing down how I'm feeling, and it really helps me transmute that pain and to see a bigger perspective of like, okay, what am I learning from this? And it's been like that since I was a kid. I think I started writing poetry when I was like 8 years old. Like as soon as I learned it in elementary, I was like, this is it. This is my form of expression, like one of them. And I've risen in love with that because it's helped me elevate my experiences and understanding that that there's a deeper meaning at it. If I only look at the surface level without expressing it, then of course, you know, falling into this pit of like, wow, I'm a victim. But I'm not a victim. I'm not. This is my story. This is building strength in me to be a beacon of light for those who have been through what I've been through.
Can you tell us about your first loss or heartbreak?
My first loss was my grandmother. I was in foster care when she passed away, And she was a huge support whenever I was younger. She was probably the only support of like a, I guess like a, not even a role model, but just a safe place. And so that felt really hard to know that, you know, like I couldn't be there for her last moments or be there with her and spend that time with her. And that really hurt, because being with her was like a sanctuary, a safe place where I could just be. But I pray to her. I pray to her and I speak with her and she's with me. And so I know, like, even though that physical, you know, presence of her being there isn't here, I know I feel her. So it's a loss, but it's a loss with the transition of knowing, like, no matter where I go, I feel her with me always.
How does that feel? The feeling of someone being with you who's passed.
I feel protected. There's moments where when things get really hard, I mean, I have an altar space. I have an altar space for my ancestors, from, you know, my spirit guides and my grandmother, and I pray to it. I pray to it, and sometimes I'll have that conversation of like, okay, well, if there's not somebody here physically in this world that I'm able to talk to, I speak to them, because I know that they're there listening. And then as soon as I do that, it's like a weight of relief is lifted off me, and I just leave it in their hands. I leave it in God's hands, you know, like I leave it in this higher elevated state of being's hands, like, you know, like that. I don't have the answers to everything, and that's okay.
Who first taught you love and how?
What I feel, real love, what I feel like that experience has been for me, and who taught that to me was actually this year. It was the first time I experienced real love. I went to conscious leadership training and yoga teacher training, and the person who led it, the two people that led it, Alexander and Kara, they were very embodied with love beings, and being able to be there and show up as I was without judgment, and being able to share to them like some of the deepest things that I've been through, that not very many people know, and then being like, you know, you got this, and believing in me, and being in that community felt so loving. And even when I had triggers come up and hard experiences, them being there with me taught me like a love that felt unconditional. And I've integrated that, because I see that now that presence they've had with me, I'm able to hold for others. And that was because they taught me unconditional love. And I feel like there's really much a difference between love and unconditional love, because love can be conditional, right? Like with expectations, and, you know, that really does push people away. But when you have unconditional love, where they're able to just be all that they are without judgment, like it helps a person grow, and it's helped me grow tremendously.
How do you define love?
I feel like love is at the core of all of what we are. I feel like it's a light that illuminates the darkness. And I feel like darkness isn't a bad thing either. I feel like there's both aspects to it. I feel like we need darkness in order to be brought to the light. I feel that love does that. I feel like love safely illuminates the darkness so that it can be integrated. I feel like we are all love, but it's just that reminder that we are, so that we're able to feel that within ourselves. I definitely don't think it's something that we experience outside of ourselves. Mm-hmm. I feel like people can only meet you as deeply as they met themselves. So if somebody's already in the place where they've integrated their darkness or even their light, they're able to show up in their relationships that way, and you'll feel that. I feel like love is unconditional. Love is presence and connection, and that's what everybody seeks, is just love and the connection at the end of it all. You know, people like to fill the void with material things, but at the end of the day, what that place inside of them is craving, is love and connection. And sometimes people think they can only find that through other people, but if you don't have that level of acceptance, love is acceptance. Yes, that's what I was trying to get to. Love is acceptance of all aspects of yourself. So if you don't have that level of acceptance within yourself, well, then how are you going to accept anybody else? You can't. It's conditional.
What's a good day look like for you?
A good day looks like for me waking up and doing my morning practices. I'll go outside like barefoot in the grass and I'll do sun salutations. There's some yoga poses. Doing yoga. Yoga's great. It feels good in my body. It helps me get in my body. A day where I get to dance. Or even in community. Being in community with like-minded people. It's a good day for me. It's very healing to connect in that way.
What about a bad day and how you get through it?
That was me yesterday. I wouldn't necessarily say it was bad. I feel like it really does matter for us to have, like a strong sleep cycle and making sure you get enough sleep, making sure you're eating enough. And yesterday felt pretty rough, but I made it through. I dove into community. I spoke with some people and had really heart-to-heart connections, which really helped me have a sense of peace. Yeah, it was like, I may not be at my top energy today, but I'm still supported, and that feels great.
What's been a humbling experience for you?
I think my interactions with people. I feel like as I continue to integrate my shadow, which is, things that we've pushed away in childhood, that's what really our shadow is, right? As I continue to integrate that, people get drawn to me. I'll have like random encounters with people where like I'll smile. I smile at everyone. I smile at everyone. I look in the eyes, and sometimes people feel called to talk with me, and sometimes they'll receive a message from me, or I'll receive a message from them. I feel like it's really humbling that the encounters I have with people, they're like, wow, like I would have never seen it in that perspective, or wow, you're such a light. And I feel like it's humbling because I'm like, well, actually, you're the light. The fact that you have the ability to perceive that means it's already inside yourself. So it's humbling because I get to take these compliments that people give me and return them in a way to remind them of who they are, truly.
What's the hardest thing you've been through?
I feel like the hardest thing that I went through was being separated from my siblings in foster care. Since my parents weren't around a lot when I was younger, I became the parent, essentially, since I was oldest. And that hurt a lot, being separated from them, because I was like, well, what's my purpose now? And finding out who I was in my own self, that felt hard because they've been through a lot of things that I wish I could have been there with them for, and I wasn't able to be.
How are your siblings doing now?
My brother, he is overcoming. He's in a shedding period for sure. He's had a rough time, of course, overcoming old patterns as they arise, but I really do feel like he's coming to a point in his life where he's like, okay, yeah, that's enough. I'm done with, what I learned from my parents. Like, I'm gonna make better for myself. So I see him doing that and him being intentional. I'd like to think I'm a partial influence, but even if not, like he's having this transitionary period of his life where he's stepping into his power over his own, taking responsibility over his own life. That instead of giving somebody else ownership of like how his life is occurring. My little sister, she's 16. She is learning. She's learning for sure about herself. I feel like she definitely does feel curious to the things that I share to her about alternative medicine and ways to overcome like depression and anxiety. So I do feel that she's also in a period of like wow, like what does this mean for me, and how do I apply this to my life?
So for this next question, if you can go in your mind and think, this life event can be mental, physical, or spiritual. Can you tell us about a time in your life that you relate with the word war?
I feel like that definitely was an old version of me. I was at war with myself in my mind. I thought that everyone was against me. I thought that, like I had to be a certain way to people to get what I felt like I deserved, I needed. I feel like that was my definition of war. And I feel like that's still a lot of people's definition of war, definitely. I feel like the world's manifestations of war is that people having a war within themselves. And I felt like it really had to do with the things that I learned growing up, and it wasn't until I started to let go of them that this war dissipated, and it just became an understanding of like, okay, this is not who I am. This is just something that was given to me, but I don't have to keep it.
Not keep what exactly?
Thought patterns, behaviors, yeah. Certain behaviors that we learned from our parents. For example, I recently let go of marijuana. That was something that I was using to avoid feeling my emotions. And now I'm on the other side of like, I feel so present, just being able to sit with my emotions rather than suppress them. Like when I was a child, when I was having emotions, my parents felt uncomfortable with them, so I was shut down. I wasn't allowed to feel them. And so letting go of that is an example. Letting go of patterns. So patterns, maybe you have a certain behavior that your parent does. And when you notice it arise, having that awareness as it arises, doesn't mean it's going to completely stop, but as you continue to have awareness, you can make that decision in that slight moment when it's about to happen. Is this what I want to continue doing? Is this who I feel like? Is this in alignment with my highest good? Is this in alignment with where I want to be in life? Is it? If it's not, then let it go. It's a process.
So that war, the initial war where you said, thinking people are against you, et cetera, can you talk more about those moments? Yeah. When you were in that, like, kind of the thick of that?
I was really bitter. And I was really hateful at that time. It was like if I was having a bad day, everyone was having a bad day. Everyone. I would make sure of it too. Mm-hmm. And it was projections of like what was going on inside of me. I really do feel that the way that people treat you is a reflection of how they treat themselves inside. It's a reflection of that relationship they have to themselves. So at the time, I had a war going on in my mind. I had this voice telling me that I wasn't good enough. I had this voice telling me that, I was gonna end up like my parents. I had this, which I love them so much, and they're on their own path too. God bless them. But it's just like those thoughts coming up, and that was my war, right? Being like, feeling like, what? But I feel like I am enough, but this thought's telling me that I'm not. So then that would project outward with how I would treat people.
So for this next question, it's the same type of question. Go in your mind and think, this life event can be mental, physical, or spiritual. Can you tell us about a time in your life that you relate to the word peace?
I feel like that I'm feeling more often. Peace. I feel like peace first came to me when I started realizing that I didn't want to continue my life the way it was. I feel like peace is acceptance of what is. Like there's no good, there's no bad, there's no wrong or right, no negative, no positive, there just is. And so I feel like peace comes to me in moments where I'm just present, deeply present with life, and it just feels like, wow, like I'm able to be here and work with life in each and every moment. I feel like it really did come from me strongly this year at the training that I went to, because there was a lot of release happening. We did breath work ceremonies, which was, letting go of a lot of stored emotions in our body. So it was like that, letting go of those emotions made space and room for love to come in, or love to be filled in me. That whenever things are occurring in my life now, because that was in January, like when things are occurring in my life, it's like, okay, well, this just is. There's no good or bad. Everything that happens in my life is a gift, and it is here to show me the way. There's always a deeper meaning at it. So peace is just, for me, how I experience that is an acceptance of what is in the moment.
Can you tell us about a truly difficult time in your life, how it felt, how you endured?
I feel like when I lost faith and I was not believing in anything, I really felt like I had fell into like a black hole. And it was depression, anxiety, despair. And that was hard. Because it was like, I was praying, and I was like, before that I was like praying, and I was like, God, please. And, these patterns were continuing. And when I was in that dark place, it really put into perspective, like, how far gone I had been from, like, having faith. And I feel what really got me out of that was realizing that I was creating my own suffering through my mind and my thought patterns. And what helped me come out of that was creating new thought patterns. Taking a look at my subconscious mind and being like, oh wow, that, there is darkness there, but how can I replace this with something that is actually useful for me in continuing my life so that I'm not in this black hole?
How'd you get out of that black hole?
The flower of life. I really started looking into these powerful speakers who talked about self-realization and consciousness. I found Alan Watts. When I found Alan Watts, that led me to Ram Dass. Ram Dass led me to Wayne Dyer. Wayne Dyer led me to the Tao Te Ching. And then I dove into Eastern philosophies, Eastern religions. And it made sense to me, because before I was Christian, and I believe in Christ consciousness. But diving into Eastern philosophies, which is what a lot of what they shared, really taught me that being self-realized is integrating your shadow and taking ownership of your life. For so long, I was like, oh yeah, this is my fate. But that fate is actually something that you create in each and every moment. And so what helped me get out of that was I continued to listen to these speakers, and I was like, okay, well, this resonates and this resonates. Okay, well, how can I apply this to my life? Not just taking the aspect of like, okay, I'm going to learn as much as I can about these philosophies from the intellectual standpoint, but how do I apply this to my life? And when I started applying it to my life changed. So much was shed. A lot of those patterns don't even exist anymore, and I'm this version of myself that I would have never thought would have been created if it weren't for these powerful speakers, talking about self-realization, talking about consciousness, talking about there being another way to overcome the hardships of life.
Can you tell us about the happiest moment in your life, or one of the happiest moments in your life?
Honestly, they happen every day. I like be observing nature. I like look at the flowers or a bird. Sometimes they get really close to me. So just like being with nature, being with people, and like when I make eye contact with someone and they genuinely make eye contact back and smile at me, I feel happy. If I'm at an ecstatic dance event and I'm dancing with somebody and it's just like we're mirroring each other, that I feel happy. Mm-hmm. I was looking at the water earlier and I was just looking at the ripples and I felt happy. I feel like it's a sense of like in awe all that's around me. And even people, yesterday I was like on the bus and I was like looking at everyone. I was like, everyone is me. This is so beautiful. And that felt great because I felt like it was felt, because there was people that were drawn to me and then ended up talking with me, and, you know, like having those encounters of heart-opening experiences between people. Like, it just brings me joy to know that people are ready for it. People are ready for it. Yeah.
What inspires you?
Love. I say that full-heartedly, full passionately, especially like not trying, well, okay, love specifically in a way that to come back to the place of connection, right? I feel like when people are able to tap into love with our encounters with the world, with themselves, things are transformed. And we're already seeing that happen in the world, you know? A lot of the darkness that's being brought to light is so that it can be shed. And people are meeting it with love. People are like, what can I do about this? How can I change this? How can I help? Like, I feel like that has to do with people being like, they love themselves, they love the world, they love humanity enough to be like, okay, well, how can we overcome? How can we create a new way, pave a new way for future generations to come? And love inspires me because love is the answer. Love and connection is the answer.
What keeps you up at night?
I go to sleep early. So nothing really. I do 4 count breaths before I go to bed. So I'll do square breathing. So I'll breathe in for 4 seconds, breath retention at the top, breathe out 4 seconds, breath retention at the bottom. And what that does is it puts your mind in a theta brain state where you're telling your body, hey, we're in a safe place. It's time to wind down.
What keeps you going every day?
Love. I feel like my purpose here is to remind people of the light within themselves, regardless of the darkness that they may feel, that they are worthy of love, they are worthy of acceptance within themselves, within their life. Yeah.
So we only have a few more questions left. Did you want to add anything? I know you talked about healing and holistic healing and
alternative medicine.
And
so when our body is having physical ailments or dis-ease, which is dis-ease, your body's not at ease, your body's trying to communicate with you. Your body's trying to tell you, hey, something's going on in my body. Let's take a look at this. And sometimes that when people are having physical ailments or disease, it's a manifestation of stagnant stored energy. Dancing actually prevents Alzheimer's. That's just one of the facts. I highly recommend anybody who's having a hard period in their life or even has been through things to just be curious to alternative medicine, like breath work, like gut health, getting into gut health, what you're feeding your body. Your gut communicates with your brain. It lets your body know, hey, this is what we're gonna do today. Like, this is how we're gonna think. And whenever we're able to have a healthy lifestyle choices with what we're eating, this helps create mental clarity. It helps actually promote self-healing. When our body is in a reactive mode instead of responsive mode to life, then those old patterns come up, and that's how you're living your life. So a great way to get into that is really being mindful of like, well, what practices do I have for my body to let my body know that I'm safe? When emotions come up, am I letting myself feel them? Emotions are the key. Emotions communicate with us. When things come up, it's usually like, say somebody is arguing with someone, right? And they feel so angry. The anger might not even be towards the person or the situation. It might be towards something that happened to them in childhood, and the energy is coming up to be moved. But how it's moved is not by you screaming at your partner. It's by saying like, hey, I need a moment. And maybe you scream into a pillow. Move the energy. Because if you store the energy in your body, that creates ailment. Like, anger is held in the liver. So when people have liver problems, it's because they're storing anger in their body. They're not letting themselves feel it.
Imagine you're in the hospital today with only hours to live. What would be your regrets, if any?
So I wouldn't be in the hospital. I don't believe in hospitals. I feel like they only get to the surface level, what's going on. But if I was in my last moments of living, I know I won't have any regrets because I'm living in each and every moment what I feel called to do or what I feel called to share. No regrets.
You tell me what your dreams were as a kid. What are your dreams now?
I still have that dream to express, to create, which I do. I mean, I've started diving into music, which has been fun. I really feel like it's a powerful way for people to feel. Sometimes you'll listen to a song and it's like you're going through a portal and like maybe it brings up a certain memory and you're like, you feel this emotion come up and it's like a portal for you to feel through it. And sometimes music motivates. Sometimes you'll listen to something, like I love Logic, the rapper Logic. He talks about overcoming hardships in his life. And like music like that helps me feel like, wow, like we're doing this. We're in this together. So I still have that yearning to.
You're the co-author of your life story. What's your scenic storybook ending?
Being with a community off-grid. Being in relationship with Mother Nature. I think the off-scene part would be like a bunch of people that I really care about cultivating a relationship in nature by having a garden, like a community garden, and everyone's helping in the garden. And everybody's like smiling, laughing, and it's a beautiful, beautiful day.